You are listening to WebFit News Live Radio. News that fits your fast life.
Today, we're taking a stack of diplomatic press releases, mostly about foreign policy appointments, and combining them with some incredibly nerdy tech preservation forums.
Yeah, which sounds like a really weird mix at first.
It totally does. But our mission for this deep dive is to explore the bizarre intersection of international statecraft and, 1990s computer hardware.
Right, because those two worlds collide a lot more than you'd think.
Exactly. So we're looking at the recent appointment of Mrs. Muanpuii Saiawi. She was just made India's High Commissioner to New Zealand, succeeding Mrs. Neeta Bhushan.
And the official announcements are all about, a new chapter in trade and cultural connections.
Yeah, but when you look at these hardware sources we pulled, it's like discovering the global economy relies on a Super Nintendo.
That is basically what's happening. I mean, she isn't personally out there sourcing vintage joysticks, but the multinational corporations she's signing treaties for, they absolutely rely on what we call a technological fossil record.
Okay, break that down for me. Because Miss Saiawi is a diplomatic heavyweight, right? She's from the 2005 Indian Foreign Service batch.
Right, and she was previously a joint secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. So her new trade agreements with New Zealand heavily feature telecommunications and aerospace exports.
And this is where the collision happens. Because to actually certify those aerospace parts, factories in both countries have to use high-precision instrumentation.
Things like Agilent oscilloscopes.
Right, wait. So high-level diplomats are essentially safeguarding supply chains for anti-computer parts.
Basically, yes. Because the testing software for those specific machines only runs on operating systems and hardware from 1996.
But why not just update the software to run on a modern machine? I mean, surely that's easier.
You would think so, but upgrading and recertifying that proprietary software for a completely new platform would cost these industries millions of dollars.
Oh, wow. So it's just a financial block.
That and years of regulatory red tape. So it's actually much cheaper to pay like $1,400 for a modern PC that's been specially retrofitted with legacy expansion slots.
That is wild. It's a strict economic necessity for them.
Exactly. They need it to maintain scientific and industrial stability.
It's less like a ship of Theseus and more like, keeping an antique engine running by duct-taping modern fuel lines to it.
That is a perfect analogy.
We're literally keeping the 90s on life support.
Yeah.
And looking at the specs in these forms, there's a huge obsession with the Socket 7 standard.
Oh, yeah, and the Intel 430HX chipset. Those are legendary.
Or I'm looking at these notes on the Asus PIP55T2P4 motherboard from that era.
Yeah.
But why are they clinging to this specific board? Why not literally any other old computer?
It comes down to architectural robustness. That Intel chipset wasn't just, a basic consumer component. It actually supported 11-bit tag RAM upgrades. Yeah, think of tag RAM like an index in a massive library. By slotting in a specialized chip, that Asus motherboard suddenly had a map to navigate 512 megabytes of memory.
Which was a ridiculously massive library for the 90s.
Right. And it could do it without getting lost. That allowed for the stability and error correction they needed to process complex scientific data.
So the system wouldn't just crash mid-test.
Exactly. Flawless data processing.
But keeping a 30-year-old motherboard alive isn't just about finding the right RAM. Hardware physically rots.
Oh, it really does.
I was reading the source notes on this Dallas chip failure, which sounds like a massive headache.
It is the ultimate bottleneck for these preservationists.
So basically, there's an internal real-time clock on these boards, and it has a battery permanently sealed inside a block of solid epoxy. Why would a manufacturer entomb a battery in epoxy if they know it's going to die eventually?
Well, the original intent back then was durability. Sealing it in epoxy protected the delicate clock mechanism from harsh industrial vibrations.
Like moisture and dust on factory floors.
Exactly. But the side effect is essentially planned obsolescence. When that internal battery inevitably dies, the system just gets amnesia.
It can't remember anything.
Nope. It can no longer retain its basic startup settings or the system time, which makes it utterly useless for synchronizing those precision instruments.
And you can't just buy a new Dallas chip off the shelf anymore.
It's not a chance.
So the preservation technique is just wild. Isn't it terrifying that global trade infrastructure relies on someone hacking a microchip with a rotary tool?
It really is. Technicians literally have to take a rotary tool and physically grind away the solid epoxy on the chip.
Just to expose the microscopic internal metal contacts.
Right. Then they sever the connection to the dead battery and hand solder a standard flat watch battery like a CR2032 directly onto the exposed wiring.
That sounds like a delicate high-stakes operation.
It really is. I mean, one sleep of the rotary tool and you've destroyed a vital component of a telecommunications testing grid.
Wow. But it underscores a fascinating reality.
It really grounds the whole concept.
Yeah. High-level statecraft, global supply chains, massive trade agreements. They aren't just abstract concepts floating in the cloud. They are deeply tethered to the physical world.
Relying entirely on the ingenuity of engineers keeping an old motherboard alive with a soldering iron.
Exactly. So for you listening, the next time you read about a diplomatic mission like Ms. Saiawi's crucial work bridging India and New Zealand, remember that those massive treaties are quietly propped up by granular, gritty hardware hacks.
So the future of international trade is literally built on the fossil record of our technological past.
Which leaves you with this to ponder. If our current global trade relies heavily on carefully preserved 30-year-old motherboards, what seemingly disposable technology sitting on your desk today will we be desperately trying to hack and keep alive in 2056?